All right, today we're going to be reading Chapter 3 of Fortune Falls by Jenny Goebel. This video is published with permission from Scholastic Inc. Chapter 3, Lucky Penny. Petey had a good day, a purple day, his preschool teacher said. At first, I thought Miss Summer was referring to the purple paint splatters in Petey's curly light brown hair the exact same color and texture as my own. Miss Summer's hair, on the other hand, was a rich chestnut, and it fell into a perfect bob just below her chin. With hair like that, not a single strand out of place, she had to be a lucky, which was a good thing, I reminded myself. Petey stuck with me all the time. The last thing he needs is a hapless person looking after him at school, too. It was only when Miss Summer pointed to a clipboard with a rainbow-colored behavior chart that I realized what she meant. Purple was the highest level, she said, beaming appreciatively at my little brother. I was slightly taken aback. It was not a look people often gave us Bleakers. What about the paint? I asked, thinking she must have gotten Petey mixed up with one of the other preschoolers. Another child's art project gone terribly wrong, I'm afraid, Miss Summer said, and then clicked her tongue. Now that was the sound I was used to. Petey and I made it back across the splintered cement we'd crossed that morning, again without stepping on a single crack. When the sidewalk curved to the right, we continued going straight. The dirt path that ran behind a row of houses with large yards and pretty shutters on the window was a far safer route for the two of us. Since I didn't have to worry about breaking my mother's back just then, I allowed myself to ponder what it might mean to have a Lucky for a brother. I've always assumed Petey would veer toward hapless like the rest of the family. Not that Mom or Dad had ever been tested. The luck test was enacted after my parents were out of school and married, which meant most of the adults in town hadn't been tested either. It only wormed its way into the school system 9 years ago after a boy named John Floyd turned 13 and nearly reduced his entire neighborhood to ashes. All it took was a gas leak, a few birthday candles, and a ball of flames engulfed his home. It was a windy day. The fire spread quickly. The school board president's house could not be saved. Still, test or no test, my parents were clearly ill-starred. They'd had me for a daughter, hadn't they? But what if Petey wasn't? What if he could sail through life without worrying that doom lay around each and every corner? What would that even feel like? The truth was, I could remember the last time someone had looked at me the way Miss Summer had looked at Petey, as though somewhere inside there might be a streak of good fortune. It was the last time I truly felt lucky. I could remember how quickly that feeling had changed. Dad and I had been taking Wink for a walk when a tawny bird jolted up from the pebbly, dry riverbed in front of us. It flapped its wings, but instead of taking flight, it began staggering around unsteadily on absurdly long legs. I let out a cry, thinking the bird must have been injured. Dad had only laughed. "It's a killdeer, Sadie girl. She's just pretending to be hurt to lead us away from her nest. Probably thinks Wink, the one-eyed wonder dog, is searching for her next meal. Really laying it on thick, aren't you, Mama Bird?" As the killdeer continued with her award-winning performance, I spotted exactly what she didn't want us to see. "Look," I said, forging ahead, "the killdeer's eggs. I didn't know birds ever built their nests on the ground." Dad nodded. "Some do," he said, and smiled up at me proudly. "Maybe you're a lucky, happening upon one so easily." The possibility of it had me feel as though I had a hot air balloon inside, ready to lift me off the ground. I'd felt so deliciously light and happy then. Glancing down again at the purple clumps in Petey's hair, I wished like mad I could cinch the memory off there. But this memory was like a landslide, and I just couldn't stop the rest of it from barreling over me. "I'd better not get too close with Wink here," Dad had continued. "Plus, their mamma does seem to be rather distressed. We should probably move on." As I turned to do just that, I accidentally kicked up a small round pebble with one sneaker and it rolled beneath the other. Next thing I knew, I was stumbling and then lurching forward trying to regain my balance, which I did. Fi- Finally, when one foot landed squarely in the center of the killdeer's nest. I felt the crunching beneath my misplaced sneaker before anything else. Before my dad and Wink were trotting up beside me, before the mama bird gave one last despondent squawk, and before the crack of lives ending along with their fragile eggshells reached my ears. My 7-year-old self slammed my eyes shut and stubbornly refused to open them as hot tears slid down my face. Countless stained dresses, falls from beds, a twisted ankle the day before ballet recital. This was just the latest on a long list of accidents my family had been trying to explain away for ages. Shh, my dad had soothed and tried to soothe my unmanageable curls with his hand. Wink licked my knee. Listen to me, Sadie girl, Dad said. Even if you aren't lucky, you're smart, and that's far more important. I soaked in his words, trying to let them patch the punctured balloon inside me. It never truly worked, though. Something always happened that seemed to rip the seams wide open again. But for a long time, maybe even up until the day Dad died, I was foolish enough to believe I might someday be mended. Petey gave my hand a tense squeeze, drawing me back to the present day. Sadie, we're almost there. Of course we were. Part of my superbly awful lot in life, including living on the far side of Fortune Falls Cemetery. It was bad enough that my brother and I were forced to navigate the most treacherous stretch of sidewalk on a near daily basis, but we also had to trek past the gates of the old graveyard each day on the way home from school. Fading ribbons were tied to the cemetery fence post, and wilted flowers were scattered beside the path. But I knew that none of these memorials had been left for those buried inside. Past the graveyard, hold your breath, lest you wish to dance with death. The rhyme was taught to all the children in Fortune Falls, and yet people still perished along this route. Before they closed the streets, cars would break down and the drivers would panic, forgetting to hold their breath while they ran towards safety. The road is now its own graveyard of abandoned vehicles. Even the fire and police departments wouldn't respond to an emergency anywhere in the vicinity. The footpath was much more direct and therefore much shorter. If you were a fast walker, you'd only have to hold your breath for about 20 seconds. But if the makeshift memorials were any indication, mishaps still occurred. At least this path was more accessible than the road, and the bodies had been cleared. I didn't think I could trust myself to walk down a path littered with bones every day and not scream. Are you ready? I asked Petey. He shook his head. Okay, then we'll wait until you are. Petey's slight little frame heaved with relief. He flashed me a puny, crooked smile and then bounded off for a nearby tree. Oh boy, I thought to myself, this tree is going to be the downfall of Petey's good day. I pictured him with his arm in a sling and chased after my brother. When I reached the magnificent old oak, he'd already scrambled up 3 branches, and there was no way I was fortified with enough luck for tree climbing. Petey, I yelled. You can see inside the cemetery from up here, he hollered back. I don't want to see inside the cemetery. I want you to come down. It's like a lost city. There are vines all on all the crosses, and like half of the headstones are broken or falling down. There's a reason everyone gets cremated these days, I nearly screamed, and if you're not careful, you're going to be one of them very soon. Petey made no attempt to come down. Instead, he said, Hey, some big kids are coming this way. In Petey's world, big kid could mean anyone a year older than he was to someone 3 times his age. Instinctively, I ducked behind the oak. What do they look like? 3 girls. That ruled out the only big kid in town I cared to see. Stay quiet, I yelled. Then, without really thinking about what I was saying, I added, with any luck, they'll pass us by. But, hush! Come back to the next video for the rest of this chapter, please.